Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. And there is a new poll out, of course. They're coming thick and fast. But this one shows a direct link to the fall in one party's support and the rise in another. The SNP's share of the vote has fallen from its peak of 45%. It is now sitting at 38. It does mean they're still the biggest party, but the support is slowly waning. There is a constant drip, drip, drip of supporters going from the SNP, and they're going directly to Labour, who are now snapping at the heels. The Tories are unsurprisingly third, and Lib Dems fourth. We're going to take a look at the poll. We're going to see what the numbers mean, but it does seem very secure now for Labour. They know they're ascendant. They are getting the momentum. And it looks like they now represent the biggest threat to the SNP, despite Stephen Flynn yesterday claiming that he needed to borrow the votes from Labour and Lib Dems in order to defeat the Tories. The Tories are not the enemy in Scotland. As far as the SNP are concerned, it is directly Labour. And of course it doesn't make good reading for Yousaf, whose personal ratings are falling faster than a stone. So let's get into the story, have a look, and tell me what you think. So, poll shows SNP losing support of people who believe in independence. So it's the actual people who are pro-independence are turning away from the SNP, which is not surprising because they're looking at what the SNP stand for, the people that make up the SNP, the very core of the party. Everything about it seems to be turning people away. The corruption, the bribery, the scandals, the criminality, the immorality, the fact that the leadership is incapable of backing victims and instead supports the perpetrators. It's all these things. They add up and things are only going to get worse as time goes on. So the SNP is losing the backing of independent supporters according to a new poll. The survey carried out by Survation for the strategic advisory firm True North and shared on the Hollywood Sources podcast also found that less than half of the party's voters think favourably of Yousaf. So even people who are members of the SNP, the actual SNP, rank and file, the broad church that is the SNP, over half of them don't want Yousaf as leader because they don't like him. They just understand that he's useless, that he is damaging for the whole party. He damages the party, damages the reputation, damages their chances of independence because of how he is seen. And like I said, the moment he was elected, he split the party down the middle, and he always was going to because he was incapable of bringing Kate Forbes in. When asked how they would vote in the next general election, the SNP was on 38%, down 2 points from the firm's last poll in early April, and 7 in total from its peak. Labour was down 1 point at 31, while the Tories were up 1 at 18, and the Lib Dems had jumped 2 points to 9. But this fall, obviously, you've got this fall from the SNP. They've gone from 45% to 38%. Labour are at 31%. It's a 4.5% swing to Labour would see Labour forming the next Scottish government. That is not a big swing in terms of politics. It's a doable swing, especially if you have the momentum. And the Labour Party actually does have the momentum because not so much that they're doing well, it's that the SNP are doing so appallingly badly. But it's going to play out. But even if it stays like this, it still means that the SNP's majority, if you can call it that, still a minority government, but they're just in place with the Greens. But it will be slashed. They will be. They may well be the largest individual party, but they will represent maybe only a quarter of the seats in Holyrood. You cannot run a government on that. It will have to be a broad church government. On the Hollywood constituency vote, the SNP were down at 3 at 39%, while Labour remained at 30%. The Tories were up 1 at 19%, and the Lib Dems again saw a support rise by 2 points, taking them to 9%. I think a lot of the rise of the Lib Dems is simply SNP supporters who just cannot force themselves to go to Labour. But it makes you wonder where the little rise in the Tories is, because you're getting SNP supporters going to Tories? Really? Very weird, isn't it? The pollster also showed a drop in SNP support on the list vote. Mr Yousaf's party were down 3 points to 32%, while Labour dropped 1, taking them to 26%. So only 6% difference on the list vote. It only takes a 3% swing, which is tiny. Both the Tories and the Greens saw their vote jump 1 point, taking them to 19 and 10 respectively, while the Lib Dems remained at 7. Alex Salmond's Albert Party won the backing of 3% of the voters, and it's the first time they've won enough support for it to be picked up on a Survation poll. And it makes you wonder how many are swinging towards him. Can't be that many, but there's certainly enough that he's got that upswing. And at 3%, would he get a seat? It's possible. It's possible on the list. He may even end up with a seat. So that would be a surprise. It said the party said their share of the vote was as high as 6% in Glasgow. That would definitely be a seat there. Asked about independence, 52% of Scots said they would vote no, down 1 point on last month, while 48% would back yes. So that's in line with the last referendum. Professor Curtis told the podcast the truth is that we are looking at a situation where a political institution is in trouble, even though the cause for which it is in favour isn't in trouble. Whereas in the middle of January, 76% of those who voted yes in 2014 were saying they'd vote for the SNP. That figure is now down slightly below 2/3, so it's under 66. So that is a massive swing, that people who would vote yes would vote for the SNP. So they've still got the strong yes support, slightly weaker, but the support for the SNP has fallen off a cliff with those people. Whatever Nicola Sturgeon's intention in resigning as leader, she has created a sequence of events whereby support for the SNP has gone down. And that's as a direct result of the new leader being so useless, derided, ridiculed, and generally seen as someone not capable of leadership. The Strathclyde University psephologist said Mr Yousaf's victory in the leadership contest had created political difficulties for the party, and that is putting it mildly. His first act as leader was to rent the party in half by picking his bum chums and lickspittles and putting them into the cabinet and taking no one from the opposition side of the party. He could not unite the party. He could not have a rounded cabinet. He stuck it all on one side, and all of these people are toxic and fairly useless, just so he can make himself look slightly better. But in actual fact, he's just ridiculed him by showing him as being weak, because he dare not have anyone on his side or in the cabinet who would disagree with him. For good or ill, Mr Yousaf is not popular, not just within the wider Scottish public, but within supporters. Only 45% of 2019 SNP voters say they think favourably of him. And this is echoed with the opinion polls that were saying during the course of the leadership contest itself, he is a very unsupported, unpopular, leader within the SNP. The broader Scotland can't stand him, but even his own party don't like him. However, Sir John said the recent chaos engulfing the SNP, including the arrest of former Chief Executive Peter Murrell, had not had a major impact on the party's support and had not resulted in a boost for Labour. Well, I'm very surprised at that, because I would have thought that was exactly the sort of thing that would have happened. He said, despite what was some pretty horrendous pictures of the police outside the home of Nicola Sturgeon and Peter Murrell, which you might have thought would have done serious damage to the SNP's standing in the opinion polls, the message, at least so far as Westminster is concerned, is perhaps a bit more of debate about Holyrood, is that it hasn't. He said this is the second poll to be conducted since the arrest of Mr Murrell and the associated events by a company that also polled immediately after the election of Humza Yousaf as its leader. And support for the SNP down by a couple of points, but that's it. Equally, Labour support is down by a point, and all of this is frankly potentially within the norms of sampling error. All the polling is that Labour support in the wake of Mr Murrell and his arrest is pretty much flatlining. Nevertheless, Professor Curtis said Labour had been incredibly lucky thanks to Partygate, Liz Truss's tenure in number 10 and the bitter SNP leadership contest. In other words, the Labour Party north of the border is profiting from a sequence of mistakes by their opponents. But those mistakes are continuing to happen, and every day we show more and more things. Now, yesterday, this poll was taken before, but yesterday you have, Banff Buchan MP throwing her constituents under the bus. You have the ongoing ferry failures. You've got so much more currently happening that support is falling and falling. And as people start seeing how bad things like the NHS are, support will fall more. By sitting still and not messing up, and at least having both a UK-wide and a Scottish leader who people at least regard as being respectable, if not necessarily something they have a great deal of enthusiasm about, the apples have been falling into Labour's lap, he said, frankly, on both sides of the border. And the poll also asked voters what extent they thought favourably or unfavourably towards Scottish political leaders. Mr Yousaf was on -12, while Tory leader Douglas Ross was on -20. That's not surprising, considering. Green co-veners Patrick Harvey and Lorna Slater were both on -16, while Alex Cole-Hamilton was on -7. Only Labour's Anna Sawar scored a positive rating on +5. How very weird that the Labour leader is the only person out of all the leaders that's got a positive rating. Probably because he never opens his mouth. He keeps quiet. He keeps out of sight. He doesn't do anything to antagonise, I think. But it's just weird. In response to survey results, Jeff Aberdeen, former Chief of Staff to First Minister Alex Salmond, said that it was a bad poll for the SNP. It's not as bad as it could have been, but the trend is against them. And when you look at the series of all the recent polls, they are going in a definitely downward line. There's been nothing that's ticked them upwards for quite some time. And that will make for a very, very concerned reading Holyrood for the SNP when they see that their trajectory is definitely downwards. He said also for the SNP, if we delve into the figures and the tables, almost a third of SNP supporters are particularly sceptical about the Green arrangement and the coalition. Hamza Yousaf needs to show a bit of teeth and a bit of determination and robustness in the face of the Greens and that perception about how influential the Greens are. Everybody thinks it's a green tail wagging a yellow dog. He says, I do think Labour will be looking at this going, yep, we'll take that. It's strong. We're a strong second. We're very ready to pounce. But privately, it'll be, after what we've seen in England, why are we not seeing us advance a little bit more? I think they need a more charismatic leader. I honestly think Scotland could be a fertile ground for Labour. What they need is someone higher profile. I think Anna Sawar has literally kept his powder dry. He's not made big announcements. He's not been putting himself out there. He's kind of hiding away. Bunker mentality, perhaps. By not saying things, he's not saying bad things. He's not saying things that'll annoy. And so he's reaping a bit of, how can we put it? He's getting a reward for not antagonising people. I think if you had someone more akin to Jackie Baillie, you had that attack dog who goes out into the public domain, shows people this is what Labour think and do, shows her claws, bares her teeth, has, an attack on the SNP on a fairly regular basis and makes a point of it and has she can get good backing. She could raise the Labour Party quite substantially. I do think Anna Sawar is probably not the best leader at the moment. He may be as steady as she goes kind of captain of the ship, but I think with the run up to these elections coming up, I think you need someone a bit more gung-ho, and I think perhaps Jackie Baillie is a bit more gung-ho. And if you can't give her the leadership, at least make her the party spokesman on products and get her out there. She has got that ability, I think, to reach into people's souls. Anyway, Alex Salmond will be quite pleased with the 3%, but of course making sure that materialises on election day 3 years from now is a different matter. I think that would give them maybe 1 or 2 seats. Yeah, I think the 3% is likely to give him at least 1 seat. I think that's fairly certain, but 2 at a push. I can't see it. But if he gets himself a seat and he gets himself a little pension, it's what he's after, because he couldn't go out and get a real job. But he's a bloody awful man, isn't he? He's another one. He's a serial failure. Never really achieved anything. Alba Party Chair Tasmina, I was to apologise, I misread her name to begin with there. Tasmina Ahmed Sheikh said the poll was the third in a month to show the party on course to win seats at the next Holyrood election. And she said it would give the party, due to hold their conference in Inverness on Saturday, a real spring in our step. I will say that I'm surprised that Alaba aren't getting more from the SNP. They're both pro-independence, and I think people who couldn't stomach either the SNP or Hamza Yousaf need a home, and I think Alex Salmond possibly would have been the natural home for them. But then there's a lot of people in the SNP who couldn't stomach Alex Salmond. So it's choose your poison, really, isn't it? Anyway, I shall round off there and come up. It was an interesting little poll. It does show that the trajectory is definitely down, and that he is not as popular, even in his own party, as he needs to be. So I think his time is slowly coming to an end, and I shall come up. Yeah, I think as time goes on, the support, which is slowly whittling away, will hit a cliff edge. It will hit a point where it will just tip and go, where as few as 1% more, and you'll have a Labour majority. And at that point, I think the momentum can be completely with Labour. I think they will push hard at that point. They will raise their profile, up their game, and they will hopefully scuttle out the SNP at the next election. And I'm not saying Labour are going to be better. I'm definitely not saying that, because all parties are the same. They're all, anti-us, really. But it will be just a different type of bad, the attack. It won't be incompetence, put it that way. I don't think Labour are as incompetent as the SNP. I think their policies are possibly just as damaging, but at least it'll be deliberately so, not just through incompetence. So when and they've got a chance of getting some things right. They've got a chance of delivering on some things. And I think their change of priorities as well, by not looking at independence through the lens of independence, every single thing, they may get one or two things right. But I think if Labour truly want to be seen as a success, if they do win the election, if they do get and form the next government, and they want to be seen as a success, they have one single job, as far I think as something like 80% of Scots are concerned, and that is the NHS. That should be their primary function. And if they can get that back up to standard, they'll be seen as a success. And, that's it. But it's not as though the SNP are doing anything about the NHS or social care, which is a curious way of saying that my next video will be on exactly that subject. So do watch the next video. It's all about the NHS and their care and lack thereof, and how much money they're wasting. So that's a little advert for the next video. Anyway, I shall round off there. Thank you very much for listening. If you like what you're seeing here on the channel, please hit that subscribe button, ring that bell, leave a like, share the video. Definitely leave a like, though, because that's the big one for us. And until next time, which is about the NHS, about social care in Scotland. Until next time, stay safe, stay well. Just don't give your vote to people you don't like, and goodbye.